Hello, my friends. This is a pretty crazy situation here. Ford has reported a 65% drop in first quarter net income, and they have withdrawn their full year earnings forecast, saying it expects import tariffs to reduce profits by $1.5 billion in 2025. Now, if you combine that with Ford's expected losses in China, it could be on the hook for making a loss this year rather than making a profit, which hasn't happened for many years for Ford and would be a huge, huge problem considering their sales are likely to decline globally. Now, Ford have said the gross impact would be 2.5 billion US dollars, but it will mitigate that with 1 billion in offsets. Not exactly sure what they are, though. Ford's estimated tariff exposure is significantly lower than the 4 to 5 the 4 to 5 billion cost projected by crosstown rival General Motors, which builds a larger percentage of its cars outside of the United States, including in places like Mexico. Plus, keep in mind, a lot of General Motors parts also come from outside of America, particularly from Hyundai, and a lot of it comes from actually LG Chem, their batteries, etc. So yeah, they're going to face 25% tariffs on parts and tariffs on cars. And of course, General Motors makes a lot of their cars in Mexico and Canada as well. So GM's loss is $4 to 5 billion. Ford, they're saying they're going to be doing much better, but still, their net income in the first quarter of this year has been pretty damn bad and not what we expected it to be. I guess what could we have expected considering what's happened with the tariffs? No one expected that to happen. Or did they? Did you guys? Guys, let me know your thoughts. Ford CFO Sherry House said tariffs cost the company about $200 million in the first quarter. It was able to lower the cost by roughly 35% with strategies such as using bonded carriers to transport vehicles and parts to Canada from Mexico so they wouldn't be taxed while passing through the United States. But even though that cost was, relatively reasonable in the first quarter, it's likely to be much worse in the second quarter this year because that's when the tariff numbers are really going to start to hit. Ford said adjusted earnings before interest and taxes in the quarter fell 63% to $1 billion, and revenue was down 5% to $40.7 billion. So it's not just Tesla struggling here. Numerous automakers will report likely well below estimated revenue and profits on the first quarter this year. Net income was $471 million for the automaker, as in very, very little. It's on a knife's edge, very similar to Volkswagen Group, very small amount of income to the point where you have to ask yourself the question, all right, we're making only a few percent revenue profit on cars. That could easily go into the red. So net income being 471 million, it was blamed, well, the declines on income were blamed on plant downtime, mostly related to a redesign of the Expedition and Lincoln Navigator SUVs. And Ford argued the fundamentals of its business remain strong. Now, I would argue against that because of what's happening, particularly in China, but also Europe. Here's what Ford said. We are strengthening our underlying business with significantly better quality and our third straight quarter of year-over-year cost improvement, excluding the impact of tariffs, said CEO Jim Farley. Ford Pro, our largest competitive advantage, is off to a strong start to the year, gaining market share in the most profitable US and European customer segments. Now, Jim Farley, he's really addressing here the big structural problems Ford have been facing, which is this. For the last 3 years in a row, Ford have won the trophy you do not want to win, which is they've been paying more on warranty costs and repairs than any other company in the world per car. More, and I've reported on these numbers several times. That is a huge problem. And Jim has, in fact, singled out Ford's engineers, criticized them. I'm not sure if that was the best way to do it publicly, but that's what's happened numerous times. And Ford wouldn't have just won this award the last 3 years in a row. They would have won it probably the last 10 years in a row, if not for Dieselgate. So the Volkswagen Dieselgate scandal was counted as kind of a part of this process where they added up and they put it against warranty issues. So Volkswagen won for a couple of years because of Dieselgate. But if that hadn't happened, Ford would have won for the last literally 8 years in a row. And that's something Ford are trying to fix because it's costing them a huge amount of money. The Ford Pro commercial unit made 1.3 billion in the quarter, down 56% year over year because of lower wholesales and fleet pricing. Revenue from Ford Pro fell 16% to 15 billion. The Ford Blue internal combustion unit made 96 million, down 89%, as revenue fell 3% to 21 billion. Ford Model E, which is Ford's electric vehicle division, lost 850 million, which was a massive improvement on the 1.3 billion they lost in the same period in the first quarter of 2024. So first quarter of 2024, Ford lost the 1.3 billion on its electric car division. Now it's only lost 850 million. Big improvement, but it still means Ford's probably losing about 20 to 25,000 US dollars on each electric car that it sells, which is a pretty big loss. However, the company's electric vehicle sales rose 15% in the quarter. I think that's a good sign. And even though Ford is making a loss on that division, keep in mind, if Ford was able to make 10 times as many electric cars and sell 10 times as many electric cars as it does today, it could make them at a much, much lower price. So as Ford's production of electric cars continues to grow, you can see their losses will continue to shrink. They have to do it. They've got no choice. House said this was expected to be the Model E's strongest quarter this year as profits from EVs remain elusive. In other words, Ford's saying they're likely to lose more money than this over the next 3 quarters this year on electric car sales. Ford said that excluding tariffs, it was on track to achieve its prior full-year guidance of 7 billion to 8.5 billion in adjusted EBIT. It plans to give an update at the end of the second quarter, but it's now saying because of the tariffs, it's got no idea. It doesn't know what's going to happen. It's all who knows. Given material near-term risks, especially the potential for industry-wide supply chain disruption impacting production, the potential for future or increased tariffs in the US, who knows what Trump's going to do? We've got no idea. Changes in the implementation of tariffs, including tariff offsets, retaliatory tariffs, and other restrictions by other governments, and the potential related market impacts, lots of potentials here. And finally, policy uncertainties associated with tax and emissions policy. The company is suspending guidance, Ford said in a statement. There are substantial industry risks which could have significant impacts on financial results, and that makes updating full-year guidance challenging right now, given the potential range of outcomes. Yeah, fair call, right? There is a hell of a lot of variables that automakers are dealing with right now. I understand. I know. I'd say it's fair not to criticize Ford for saying they're not going to put out their full-year guidance. Shares in Ford fell by 2.5% to around $9.90 in after-hours trading, and Ford's stock has taken a battering this year. Ford COO Kumar Galhotra said the company had not seen any supply chain disruption yet, but he said uncertainty around rare earth materials imported from China, which China might restrict, it looks like that could happen. He said it could only take only a few parts being affected to cause production disruptions, particularly with batteries and electric motors. House told reporters that Lincoln has a healthy stock of the Nautilus crossover that's built in China and doesn't plan to import any more until the 2026 model changeover. And he said Ford has not yet made any production changes to the vehicles it assembles in Mexico for sale in the United States. They may have to. Obviously, there's a bit of a tariff reprieve going on right now, but that might change very soon. For the full year, Ford expects US light vehicle sales to reach 15.5 million. That is not Ford sales, but overall market sales, down by 500,000 from its original projections. Normally in the US, you're selling around 16 million cars a year for the entire market. Ford's saying that's going to go down this year. Ford expects industry pricing to rise 1 to 1.5% in the second half of the year because of tariffs. Now, 1 to 1.5% is a tiny increase. I don't think that's accurate. I think that prices will have to go up more than that. If you're facing a 25% tariff and you increase prices by 1 to 1.5%, and your profit margins are sitting at 5, 6, 7%, then you're going to be losing a lot of money if you're facing the full effect of these tariffs, unless you raise your prices a lot more than 1%. I don't think that's an accurate statement from Ford. Amid the tariff disruption, executives said Ford continued to make progress reducing costs. House said the company was on track to take out $1 billion in costs this year, excluding tariffs. All of this is coming at a time when legacy automakers, General Motors, Ford, Volkswagen Group, Mercedes-Benz, Audi, Nissan, Subaru, these automakers are being hammered in China. And I know the American car market's extremely important to them. 16 million car sales a year is big, but 32 million car sales in China is twice that size, twice the size. And if you're getting hammered in China and you're facing these massive tariff challenges in the United States, then you're in a lot of trouble. Ford does have a lot of debt. I believe it's about 120 to 130 billion from when I last checked. But about half of that debt is financial debt. In other words, loans that people should be paying back. Should be, as long as everything goes okay with the US economy, or the global economy, I should say, then people continue paying those loans back. And that's good debt. But the other half is not so good debt. And if your car sales are slashed quickly and your profits continue to fall, then you could be in a lot of trouble. Let's be honest here. Even if you're a Ford fan, you guys know I am a Ford fan. I can be critical on Ford, but I can be critical on every car company. But even if you are a Ford fan, you have to recognize that there's some huge risks here. And that's one of the key reasons why Ford stock is sitting so low. Its price to earnings ratio, when I last looked, might have been 5 or 6, meaning people aren't confident. They're not confident in the growth of this company or even the continued sales of this company going into the future. So, guys, let me know what are your thoughts about this? How do you feel about what's going to be happening in the United States? Is this an issue people are talking about? I think the uncertainty around Trump's administration affected the election here in Australia. So here in Australia, the election has been, the Labor government won, which is sort of like equivalent to the Democrats, because there was the fear of the other side of politics putting in Trump-like policies. So there's a lot of concern globally about what's happening right now. Obviously, you guys know I try to be impartial on this, but it's definitely something I care about. And the reason I care is because we need the right governments, we need the right policies for renewable energy and for electric cars to help improve the planet, to help improve and leave behind a better place for our children. How do you guys feel all that's going right now? Let us know in the comments. Now, I've made this a live video because I think this information is just breaking and you guys would need to know this. Thanks for watching.